We were told that we won't enter Shifa. We entered, and in the spirit we say a simple thing. There is no place in Gaza that we will not reach.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu brags about the IDF's raid of Gaza's Al-Shifa hospital, the largest hospital in Gaza that is no longer functioning as a result of not only the ongoing bombardments, not only due to the raid, but of course, the lack of fuel necessary to run the machines at Al-Shifa and pretty much every other hospital in the Gaza Strip. A day after entering Shifa, Israel had yet to produce any evidence showing that there was a Hamas headquarters or command center under the hospital. They did provide what they believe is legitimate evidence of Hamas operating under the hospital, specifically under the MRI unit of the hospital. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind as you view some of the evidence that they provided to the press. Let's watch.
The military released a video from the hospital premises showing weapons they said were found inside.
A live grenade, ammunition, fighting vest with insignia, boots, and of course uniforms, and last but not least, standard AK-47.
Though so far, they presented no evidence of the massive underground Hamas headquarters Israel alleges lies beneath the hospital.
We've not been able to speak to any of the doctors that we've been in touch with in recent days. As you saw in that report, the Israeli army is saying that it found a number of weapons during searches of the hospital complex. But really, they'd built up this huge narrative about this major strategic secretive underground Hamas headquarters beneath the Al-Shifa hospital. And really all we've been presented with so far is video of a number of Kalashnikovs and some body armor. Perhaps more evidence, more video evidence will be released in the coming days.
Now, Channel 4 News in the UK has been incredible in their reporting. I think they've been incredibly fair, especially relative to other Western media outlets. But if you think they've been too fair to the Palestinians, let's go to the New York Times, which had a very similar take on the evidence provided by the IDF to justify, attacking a hospital. If you don't justify it, it's considered a war crime. So that's the reason why they're trying to make this point about how it's a legitimate military target. A day after the Israeli military took control of Gaza's largest hospital, soldiers on Thursday afternoon were still combing the site that Israel has said concealed a secret Hamas base, but had yet to present much evidence supporting the claim to the public. By Thursday afternoon in Gaza, the only evidence that the Israeli military had so far provided publicly of Al-Shifa's purported dual use was video showing some weapons and equipment, about a dozen guns, a grenade, protective vests, and military uniforms that it said soldiers found within an MRI unit at the hospital. That's typically where people like to store weapons made of metal. Within an MRI unit where machines are basically giant, powerful magnets. Cenk.
And the New York Times said it in the last sentence there that they could not verify where those weapons and flak jackets actually came from. But guys, look at how comical this is. A couple of flak jackets, some AK-47s, and a pair of boots. That's the best you got? A pair of boots?
Command center.
Okay, so there's more weapons in Lauren Boebert's house than there was at that hospital.
True.
Even if it was at the hospital, and they could have pulled those AK-47s from anywhere and put them there. And no, they have not been able to verify anybody IDF claims, but that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that their claims are almost nothing. They've been in there now for over a day. You think that if there was a giant complex of tunnels and missile launchers, etc., underneath the hospital, that the IDF would not have paraded that all over television in the whole world 10,000 times over?
So one thing I should note, this is important because prior to us going live today, news broke that the IDF discovered a shaft. So they say
a shaft. Wow, it's a good thing they killed all those innocent civilians inside the hospital.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm being sarcastic in case you're not clear, because a lot of people in American media do actually legitimately say that. Today, Alan Dershowitz put out a meme about how it's sometimes you have to attack a hospital to save lives.
Right.
Because God forbid you should find a pair of boots in a shaft, okay? So it's actually a minor miracle that there's no tunnel underneath the hospital, if that's the case, because there's tunnels all over Gaza.
Right, and understand, I mean, we don't deny that there's this intricate tunnel system all throughout Gaza, hundreds and hundreds of miles of tunnels, as has been reported. There are news reports from years ago that show some of what those tunnels look like. So I don't deny the existence of tunnels. But again, in order to justify targeting the largest hospital in Gaza, Al-Shifa, in order to justify a situation in which the hospitals are denied the fuel necessary to run the machines, in order to justify creating a situation in which premature babies need to be taken off of the incubators because they no longer have the fuel necessary to function. In order to consider that a legitimate military target, you have to provide overwhelming proof that there's this massive Hamas headquarters, and killing all those innocent civilians and patients, displacing some of them and killing others, was a worthwhile goal, right? And even in that case, it disgusts me to even consider it, right? But it's not a legitimate military target based on what we have seen from the IDF. There could be some evidence in coming days. Who knows? But as it stands today, October, what's the date? 16th? As it stands today, no, we have not seen enough evidence to justify a hospital as a military target.
Look, even if they had Hamas fighters underneath the hospital, there's no way I would kill those babies. I mean, what kind of a monster says, oh yeah, take a whole bunch of those babies off the incubators, let them die. Tons of people inside have died because of the lack of electricity, power, etc. But it turns out they were lying all along. Oh wow, the IDF is a bunch of liars. Who would have guessed? But in American media, that's like scandalous to say. No, it's not at all scandalous. The Pentagon lies, the IDF lies, government, so-called defense agencies lie all the time. And this was an outrageous lie. And they're basically rubbing it in people's faces. Now they're bombing southern Gaza.
We're gonna get to that, Cenk. Just hold on, because I want to stay on the hospital story. There are other elements to this that I think are important to share with the audience, including what the former head of Human Rights Watch, Kenneth Roth, had to say about it. Israel will have to come up with a lot more than a handful of grab-and-go rifles to justify shutting down northern Gaza's hospitals with its enormous cost for a civilian population with urgent medical needs. Now, luckily, it appears that Hillary Clinton, of all people, who's very hawkish in foreign policy, also has a red line. And it appears the red line for her happens to be hospitals as well. And it's shocking. You would never think that about Hillary Clinton. So I'm gonna read you her tweet about it. If Russian leadership would rather not be accused of committing war crimes, they should stop bombing hospitals.
Oops.
That was from March 10th of 2022. Obviously, standards for other countries don't apply to precious Israel, which gets to engage in international war crimes under the cover of the United States government, constantly defending them and supplying the weapons for them to commit those war crimes. Awesome.
Our hypocrisy knows no bounds. And when I say our, I don't mean the American people. 68% of Americans want a ceasefire. Over 80% of Democratic voters want a ceasefire. But over 90% of Democratic politicians say no. I don't care how many Democratic voters want a ceasefire. I don't care how much American voters are crying for a ceasefire. I don't care how many babies are killed. We don't care. Keep attacking the hospitals. Keep attacking and bombing in our name and with our money. That's what Democratic leadership is saying, and of course Republican leadership agrees. So Hillary Clinton, okay, is it a war crime or is it not a war crime?
Israel's doing it, so no, it's not.
No, of course not. When Russia does it, it's a war crime. But when Israel does it, it's never ever a war crime. Even though now they've killed far more Palestinian children than Russia has killed Ukrainian children. It's not even close. But they don't care about their hypocrisy. They just want to do whatever the powerful want. And they hate their own voters, and they don't want peace. So it's classic Democratic leadership to see that kind of nonsense. Admit the war crimes, and you're never gonna do it. Be honest about your funding, be honest about all this, you're never gonna do it. Defense contractors, etc.
So I do wanna give you the death toll, and I wanna be clear that unfortunately, The Palestinian Health Ministry has lost communication. Telecommunications are incredibly difficult due to the loss of fuel and the loss of power, or the lack of fuel and the loss of power, I should say. But here's what we do know so far, okay? So let's go to graphic 8 here. Israel has pounded Gaza with airstrikes and cut off food and fuel. Gaza health authorities, deemed reliable by the United Nations, say more than 11,000 people have been confirmed dead, more than 40% of them children, with many more feared trapped under rubble of bombed out homes. Now, you mentioned how many children in Ukraine have died as a result of Russia's vicious war and invasion of Ukraine. And we should look at those numbers. So that war began in February of 2022, February 24th of 2022. So from then to June of 2023, meaning June of this year, the UN put out some data about how many people had died, how many children had died. The UN Human Rights Monitoring Mission in Ukraine said that a total of 535 children were killed and 1,047 injured since the start of the conflict. So again, from February 24th of 2022, when the invasion happened, to June of 2023, a total of 535 children, according to the UN, were killed as a result of Russia's invasion into Ukraine.
So in about a year and a half, the Russians killed a little over 500 children. In about a month, Israel killed about 10 times that number. We're perfectly consistent. We're outraged by Russia's invasion of Ukraine. We're outraged by the brutal attack that Hamas did against Israel and those civilians. We're also outraged at the government of Israel killing 10 times as many Palestinians as Hamas killed Israelis, and 10 times as many children as the Russians killed in Ukraine. These are absolute, undeniable facts. People in American politics and media will concoct every lie, every excuse, every piece of propaganda to say when our allies kill and murder, it's perfectly okay. It's just self-defense. If the Russians had said that, when Hamas had said that, we would all be outraged. And we'd say that's nonsense, obvious propaganda. This is also obvious propaganda, but we're always fair. Lately, New York Times, good reporting on that, and the Washington Post has a terrific piece that'll break your heart as they document the actual individuals killed. 4-year-olds, 12-year-olds, moms with daughters, grandmothers. If you read through that and you still say, yeah, I think Israel has a right to defend itself by murdering 11,000 civilians, there's something deeply wrong with you. Check your moral compass, you're way off track.
If you enjoyed this video, that's because of our members. They make us independent, they make us strong, and they make us honest. Become a member today by hitting the join button below.